So with that, at 9 o'clock sharp, we start with this authentic impact collaborative, celebrating not only our incredibly important message for today, but also 10 days of connection. Thank you, Radical Partners, Miami Foundation, the Children's Trust, all the amazing supporters and visionaries who put together 10 days of connection. And we were already connected with NAMI Miami for many years, right, but it gave us yet another excuse, right, Susan?
Right, and I would love to thank your board member and my dear friend, Shelley Jacoby, for introducing us years ago. And it's been an amazing partnership.
Amazing, amazing. So celebrating 10 days of connection. We're thrilled for those of you who are here today who have not been with us before. That is very exciting. We do have sort of a general vibe here, but the vibe is we are formally informal. This is Tu Casa. We are here to share and to be as authentic and real about the information that we should know and what we can do for all issues affecting women and girls in your community and our community. So when we say it's your Women's Fund, we need it. We come together, and those of you who are here are those folks who show up. Thank you for introducing yourselves in the chat box. We are those who want to be prepared, not scared, prepared. We have amazing, brilliant resources in this community, and ignorance is not bliss. And we're here to learn about that, right? What you should know, and most importantly, what you can do. I'm going to welcome everybody. Let's talk about people who show up and come together. Kami can go on to the next slide. This is our amazing, they don't fit on one slide. Speaking of Shelley Jacoby, there she is. Our 19 women strong board. Thank you so much for all you do every single day. And we want to thank all of our community partners who are here in the audience. We have elected officials who are here with us today. And in the name of Marilyn Gladstone, our 87-year-old founder, who is very much with us, we thank you all for being here. Donors, large and small, we couldn't do it without you. And for those of you who are really familiar with our organization, we try and let you know that our big vision of creating a Miami-Dade where women and girls can truly thrive is set up on 4 pillars. We have leadership, we have economic mobility, freedom from violence, and today we are celebrating our health and well-being pillar. And we're supported by Citrus Health Network in this, an incredible partner day in and day out. So thank you, Citrus, for your partnership and your vision. So on we go. I'm going to briefly focus us. We're headlines with today's topic, right? Many of you saw the Miami Herald coverage recently, and also this New York Times article about the current crisis in mental health for teens. If you go into the next stat, we've seen that it is spiking. So 3 decades ago, the biggest health threat for teenagers in the US was binge drinking, drunken driving, teenage pregnancy, and smoking. And thankfully, through the efforts of many other brilliant folk, those stats have gone down, which is terrific. But we have a huge spike, and self-harm and suicide is up 60% since the year 2000. So we are here to find out what we can do. And I want you to all be prepared to be informed and inspired. On to the next slide, please, Kami, because we have a very generous voice of experience who is here, who told Camila and I that she wants her messages heard and her voice to be heard, her calls to action. And so let's learn together and welcome Rebecca Meyer. Wonderful last name, if I do say so myself. Rebecca, please lead on with this vitally important conversation. And can you just go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit to our audience, and everybody else can just mute of the panelists until I call your name, okay?
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to share my experiences and give you my perspective. I'm currently a clinical mental health counseling master's student at Florida Atlantic University, entering my clinical phase, which is really exciting. I am really passionate about speaking speaking about suicide prevention and mental health because it's a very stigmatized issue, and ultimately I feel like it affects everybody. I have experiences with a mental health condition, and I'm a suicide attempt survivor. I have lost friends to suicide. I have had friends attempt suicide. So this is a very big issue that I feel needs to be addressed. So I'm very happy to be here and talk about this.
You are amazing, and you are a leader, right? Because there's no way that any of us are going to understand what we can really do and understand today the best practices unless, we're here to have you tell us. So I learned so much when we had our pre-interview, Rebecca. If you'd like to talk a little bit about what you see is the biggest issues in this area and your calls to action, what you recommend.
So a lot of the big issues I feel like aren't just specific to Miami. I feel like they are specific to society. When I think about the issues in the mental health field and in suicide prevention, I draw on my own experiences and the experiences of my friends and my experience as a student in the mental health profession. I think one of the biggest problems is stigma. Mental health and suicide is very stigmatized, and I believe that comes from misinformation and ignorance, and it can lead to invalidation and feelings of isolation, which in turn worsen mental health problems. Personally, for me, I've had both positive and negative experiences with first responders, ER staff. I've experienced stigma. When you're in a mental health crisis, especially if there's suicidal ideation involved, usually the first people who show up are law enforcement officers. And if you're already in that state of anxiety, it can be very terrifying, really, to have police officers show up. So one of the things I think is important is that police officers should be better trained in dealing with mental health issues. I know that there's CIT or crisis intervention training programs. I believe they should be mandatory because they are not. And I think it's important for first responders to also listen to people with lived experience so they can hear it firsthand. Ultimately, there are mobile crisis teams that have been implemented across the United States. I'd like to see more of those in Florida. And I feel like that's better because usually it's clinicians who show up to the person who's having a crisis. And I feel like they're better equipped to de-escalate the person and evaluate them. When it comes to mental health crisis, a lot of the times emergency department staff are involved. And I feel like based on my experiences, there's a lot of misunderstanding and frustration. Mental health patients can be challenging, and I have personally experienced cruelty in the ER settings. And I think a lot of that has to do with staff burnout. So a solution, I think, would be encouraging these staff to practice better self-care, and also encourage these employers to take care of their employees, notice when burnout is happening, support their mental health as well. Because you have compassion fatigue, burnout. And then when it also comes to the emergency department, a lot of places do not have designated areas for people in a mental health crisis. And I've read about 23-hour crisis stabilization, which is a designated facility, even freestanding or part of the ER, where people go and they are able to de-escalate without having to resort to inpatient hospitalization. Because we're very quick to just lock people up. And I think it's important to really listen to what the person needs and validate them, which is not the same as condoning their suicidal thoughts. But just being like, hey, I hear you. I understand that you're suffering. I see what you're going through, and I'm here to support you. And then there's also something that I read about, which is peer respite. So there are locations, really not many in Florida at all, where there's like a house that's staffed with peer support workers who are trained to just listen to people in crisis. And it's much easier to speak with people who have been through it rather than solely clinicians or law enforcement. And also, I think that we can change our language related to suicide. I've noticed that a lot of people say, oh, commit suicide, which implies that it's a crime. And I think a good replacement would be to say died by suicide. And then I think also, sorry, this is a lot, I've got so many notes. Instead of saying successful suicide, I really get bothered by that term because suicide is not an accomplishment, it's a tragedy. So if we can talk about it authentically and support people who are struggling, and let them know that you're there to listen. In my experience, that has probably been the biggest protective factor. And one of the biggest factors in my recovery is just having people there. Just having them there and having them listen. They don't necessarily need to say anything or try to solve it, just hear the person out. And then also those alarming statistics regarding adolescents and children and their suicide is on the rise. We definitely need to pay more attention to that. I think we also need to pay more attention to marginalized populations. So people of color, people on the LGBTQ spectrum. So all these different things coming together and just validating these communities, supporting these communities, and just letting them know that you're there for them and that they have resources. So that's why I'm so excited to be here, is to share this perspective, and I appreciate it.
You are so generous, and we thank you for your resiliency and your clarity, because it's not so easy to tell so many people in positions of power that, you know, improvements could be made, right? And stat, right? Because everybody who's not treated with that kind of a vision, you know, is an opportunity. There's so much opportunity here. And Rebecca, there's so many people in this, you know, virtual square who care, who have really wonderful networks. So I'm really excited to see so many people here who I know are paying attention and are taking notes, and know that this is being recorded and this can be shared and analyzed and piecemealed. And if you want to show this, you know, I see amazing people, Cora, and, you know, people from JCS 211 here. If you want to take a little slice of this and use it for a training, it's really amazing, Rebecca, that you are leading us, because you give us so much, you accelerate the conversation so much, taking out of the formal academics and taking us to the real and authentic. So I have so many questions for you, and people are starting to even text me questions, but we'll ask you to join us in a little bit for the Q&A portion. How's that?
Sounds great. I'm really happy to answer questions.
All right. Well, we'll call you back. Stay right where you are. So how these Impact Collaborative works, they are interactive, even though we're not in person. It means many of you more can attend these days, but we want to hear from you. We have 3 polls and they're interactive. One of them is really important because it does give you the opportunity to connect with some of our panelists, right? So it will give you an opportunity later to say that I'd like to be in touch with NAMI Miami, and you'll get Susan's email, for example. We at the Women's Fund always believe that we're here to leverage resources on behalf of women and girls, and every tie that binds that threads a stronger fabric to this community. So please do take the polls and participate, and there'll be an exit survey later on as well, which really helps us. So thanks for all you do. So onward. Instead of hearing me talk, we're going to give each of our panelists the impossible challenge of introducing themselves in 2 minutes or less. And the only reason it's possible is because they're introducing themselves in context of our conversation today. And so our 10 Days of Connection partner, Susan from NAMI, take it away.
Good morning, Rebecca. Thank you. We are so blessed to have you as a member of the NAMI family. And for those attending today and listening to this recording, Rebecca is an Ending the Silence presenter. She works closely with us, and she represents the essence of what NAMI is about. We're not a clinical organization. We're an organization that creates a safe space and peer support, both for families and individuals who are living with mental health challenges. And our biggest goals are to normalize the conversation. I'm an accidental advocate. I had no idea a decade ago that I would be doing this work. I was a CFO of a foundation. I raised a wonderful family, including an amazing, happy, fun-loving, bright son who we successfully sent off to Case Western University for college. And he encountered a serious mental health issue and was derailed while in college. We thought it was sudden. We thought it hit us without warning. And as we became educated, we realized the warning signs were there. We just were not knowledgeable about it. We didn't know that his sleep habits, his eating habits, his lack of joy from things that had given him joy, the phone calls home that were sounding flat, we didn't realize that that was a prodrome of a mental health condition. And he came home, he became extremely ill, deteriorated into, from fear to psychosis, to delusions, to even aggression. And fortunately, we had resources. We were able to literally hustle him into the back of our SUV, take him to UHealth, where he was met in the ER. And to Rebecca's point, he was met in the ER by a psychiatric nurse who calmly and compassionately calmed him down and had him voluntarily admit himself for help. This opened our eyes to the whole mental health ecosystem, to the possibilities and resources, as well as the gaps, and really catapulted me into volunteer work, as having become involved and restarted NAMI in 2015 with a group of like-minded individuals, and to build NAMI up. There are resources in the community that are amazing. They're represented in many respects by this wonderful team that we're with today. But our role is to educate, to make sure we support, and to create a safe space so that we can help each other, as Rebecca so eloquently articulated, as well as advocate for change. And I'll just end with one thing. Part of change is that we have an opportunity now to do what Rebecca framed as an aspirational vision, to have mobile units respond. If you have a heart attack, you have a medical EMS, you don't have the police. If you have a mental health crisis, it should be trained people like the kind that met my son in the ER and in minutes soothed him and calmed him down. And we are working on that from an advocacy standpoint as well. I am so happy to be here today. I am available to help any family struggling out there, and to create and work with the amazing organizations here today and in the community to continue to advance mental health care in our community.
Thank you, Susan. And speaking of amazing organizations, Thriving Mind is with us today. Laura, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Naredo. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with Thriving Mind South Florida. Thriving Mind is one of 7 managing entities in the state of Florida. And for those of you who don't know what a managing entity is, the state of Florida privatized its safety net services, almost 15 years ago now. I've been with the organization for 18 years, so I've seen the transition over the last almost 20 years now. And what that means is we serve the uninsured and the underinsured in our community, those individuals who don't have the means or the insurance to be able to get behavioral health services, still have access to services in our community through agencies like us, through the managing entity. Our region of focus is Miami-Dade and Monroe County, and we have over 35 provider network service providers in the community. Citrus, which is one of the sponsors that you mentioned earlier, is one of our big providers of services. And, you know, just by my background, you know, my family, I had family members, my mother, my aunt, who suffered from depression and anxiety. And that's part of the reason why I ended up, you know, in behavioral health, to try to help others and help my family members to seek care and get the services that they needed. I myself am a mental health counselor by degree and provided direct services for many years before transitioning over to the administrative side to be able to further impact the services in the system at large and be able to navigate and help others in need get quality care for their loved ones. Camila, I might be messing this up, but are the slides here or in the next section, or I just do my intro? I apologize if I'm messing up the order.
We can do the next section, right?
Yeah, they're in the next section.
Okay, great. So I'll get into more in the next section, a little more statistics and demographics in order to be able to kind of frame the conversation as far as women and girls that we're seeing in our system and accessing behavioral health services. But it's a pleasure to be here today. And thank you for including me on this panel.
Oh, thank you. It's amazing how things have changed. You know, I'll just interject too that NAMI has been a part of my life since I was a teenager, and I'm 60, right? We also had, you know, mental health issues in my family. And it's really remarkable that now we're all so much closer. And speaking about closer and accessible, we should be flabbergasted by what our Miami-Dade County public school system offers to us. Talk about things changing and people caring. And Sally, I can't wait for you to tell people about all that you're doing for our children.
Well, good morning, and thank you for that. And good morning to everybody on here. Of course, the great panel who I've had the privilege in the past 4 years of working with each one of you in some way, shape, or form. And I'm delighted to be here. Also happy that many of our mental health coordinators who work with us in Miami-Dade County Public Schools were able to join in today. So just a little quick background about myself. Just finished my 32nd year in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I actually started as a teacher, moved into an assistant principal role, became a principal, worked in a North Region office as a director. And then 4 years ago, with the unfortunate tragedy of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, we had to look at ways as a district to say, how can we tackle this mental health problem that we're having nationwide? And with that said, our superintendent at the time, Mr. Alberto Carvalho, who's now out in Los Angeles, had the great vision to say, we're going to take that funding, and instead of infusing it through various departments, we're going to establish a brand new department in our school district, and that would be the Department of Mental Health Services. So that was July of 2018, and I had the privilege of helping to get this great department started. A lot of pieces to it, which we'll talk about later, which will help with some of the solutions that we're working towards. But again, as an educator, as a parent, and as a woman, very involved as an athlete, I understand the importance of really the impact that we can have and that we need to have on the mental health of all, but especially today we're talking about young women. And I do have a daughter, and I'm always thinking about her self-esteem, because we know the challenges that they face, whether they're having mental health challenges or not. We know that they face a lot of different issues as they move through society. So with that lens, I look forward to talking a little bit more as we move through the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you. And Heather, talk about great services that we have, people backing us up. Please introduce yourself and all that you do.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Heather Winters. I'm the Chief Programs Officer at Jewish Community Services of South Florida. We've been providing human services to the Miami-Dade County and South Florida for over 100 years. Our main service areas include mental health counseling services, case management, food and nutrition services, information and referral and access to resources, including our very own 211 Miami, which I will talk more about in the other sections, and also job development, prevention, and health education, in particular focusing on mental health awareness. So I'm very passionate about this topic. I am a licensed mental health counselor. I did spend many years providing direct services, also clinical supervision for clinicians. And so, you know, working directly with individuals impacted by mental health, as well as individuals experiencing thoughts about suicide, having suicide attempts, and seeing what's happening, you know, as a result of the pandemic. There's so much work to be done. And what I really like about this gathering is it's reflective of, you know, the heart of what's needed, which is about, you know, collective impact and collaboration, because it really does take a village. And, you know, I think what we're seeing as a result of the pandemic, the need is significant. We're lacking in resources. There's always more we can be doing, but together we can accomplish so much. But also, you know, in spite of everything that we've endured, I also see opportunity. And I think, you know, one of the biggest lessons coming out of the pandemic is about strengthening connection with others. And strengthening connection is such a protective factor for individuals struggling with mental health issues, and in particular, suicidal ideation and having thoughts about harming themselves. So it is a subject matter that does hit home for me. I was personally impacted having a family member, a 16-year-old who died by suicide. And, you know, further tragedy, 2 weeks later, his girlfriend also died by suicide. So I think there's so much we can do in terms of education. And, you know, today I hope what I can share is to talk about the resources available, how to get help, how to have the conversation, and, you know, what's happening in the world of crisis response, and in particular with 211 and our crisis centers, of, you know, how we support our communities.
Amazing. I have to thank everybody for being so authentic and real. You know, I sometimes, you know, say, how is it possible to feel so close to people when we're not even in the same physical room? But everybody's generosity of spirit in bringing their real selves, and because this is going to cross all of our paths, whether we're in it professionally or not. And we want to make these 90 minutes together as real as and impactful as possible. And then we encourage everybody, all these amazing people are here today to take these messages out to their networks, right? Stronger together. So in this next portion, what do we need to know? We come here not to check off a tick box. This is, you know, we'll see some statistics, but it's really what are you seeing? Things are not the same as they were 30 years ago, right? What are you seeing today? So in 3 minutes or less, we ask each of our panelists to give us a review. What are you seeing? What are you seeing at NAMI these days, Susan?
Sorry about that. We are seeing an increase in demand for our services, volume on our warm lines, and also an increase in the general community in understanding mental health and mental illness. I would say, though, that there is opportunity for additional education. People, parents, employers, we are all potential gatekeepers to saving lives if we're aware of what the warning signs are. And I talk directly to many family members who are referred to me because of my experience and also my connection with NAMI. And they approach mental health challenges with their loved ones in fear, confusion, oftentimes anger. I did everything for this person and all they do is sleep, or they're failing classes, or they're isolating themselves in their bedroom, or they are constantly misplacing things and have become very rude. They are extremely disorganized. These are things that could be, teens sowing their oats, or they can be symptoms of a deeper situation, which was in our case. When I learned about warning signs from NAMI, I checked the box on about 70% of them. And I was an attentive helicopter parent, and I didn't really put the puzzle together. And so, one of my missions is to speak to families, teachers, employers who may have individuals on their staff who are acting out of character. What's going on? Are they having onset of a mental health condition? It can happen anytime in life. Much of it happens in the age range that my son was, in early 20s, but it can happen anytime in life. I saw something in the chat about, postpartum. Yes, it could happen with a diagnosis of a new onset of illness and being faced with mortality. The question is, please get educated. There are resources out there on our website, on the Thriving Mind website, on the JCS website, and on the National Institute of Mental Health website. We need to get educated. The other thing is, you notice my background of green lights. We need to normalize the conversation, as Rebecca said. It's okay to talk about it. We talk about a bellyache, we talk about a migraine, we talk about a broken arm. We need to normalize the conversation. One way we do it is through the billboards that we're doing with Women's Fund and the public relations and media campaign that we're doing with the support of Thriving Mind and DCF. And by having a walk in May, and by lighting the city green, which is the color of mental health. Let's normalize the conversation so that people are comfortable. Our Ending the Silence program in the Miami-Dade Public Schools, with the amazing partnership and support of Sally and her team, aims to just do one thing: encourage people to seek help, normalize the conversation so that young people realize when they or a friend need to seek help. So that would be my major, plea is, let's all please get educated, because education can save lives. And I truly believe that it saved ours. Once we became involved with NAMI and we gave our son a connection and a support group and a community that he could be safe in as he was recovering, he did recover. Our story is great. He's graduating from Barry next year with an MSW, straight A's. There need to be more stories like that in the community, and I am absolutely committed to doing what I can to help that as well.
We celebrate your son, and we celebrate Rebecca and all the amazing leaders. Thank you for bringing it to everybody's real reality and their real conversations, stories we can share. Laura.
Good morning again, everyone. I'm going to get it right this time. And now we are going to talk about some statistics and some data to be able to frame the conversation a little bit for you guys. So Kami, if you want to go to the next slide. Just to give you a perspective of what we're seeing in the community. Remember, Thriving Mind is looking at the uninsured and underinsured. So this doesn't necessarily represent those who are seeking services through their insurance. But as far as women in our region, as of this current fiscal year 2021, we're on a state fiscal year, so it runs July 1st through June 30th. So thus far, from July 1st through April of this year, these are the statistics on the women that we're seeing. We're seeing that the bulk of women entering care is for adult mental health. So women's 18 and older. We serve from birth to grave, as we say. So we have infant mental health services from 0 to 5, which you would find in our children's mental health category, which is the 4th column, all the way to the elderly. So the bulk of services that you're seeing for women that are coming into care are in our adult mental health services, then followed by our children's mental health services, like I mentioned. So these would be 0 to 17-year-olds. And then the other category is our substance use category. So the adult substance use would then be our third most, and then children's substance abuse being our last category. And you can see kind of the demographic breakdown or racial breakdown as far as the bulk of the women coming in are white, and then the other next highest category is Black. Next slide, Kami. As far as the women coming into care, as I mentioned, that as far as employment or school status, the bulk of the women are unemployed. So they're, for whatever reason, maybe there are a housewife or a caretaker, they're in the unemployed category. Then followed by students. We get 1,924 students that are coming into our care, and then followed by full-time work. Next slide. And then kind of giving you a breakdown for both our substance use and our mental health. This one's specific to our substance use disorders. People are coming in and not checking off or identifying any particular substance. The bulk of the women that came in checked off unknown. It doesn't mean that they're not using substances, but at the time of the assessment or admission, they're either saying they're not sure what they're using, or maybe they're mixing drugs or not reporting. But for those that are reporting, the bulk were either alcohol or marijuana. And then going into the next slide, Kami. Now to look at mental health diagnosis across the women that we've been serving. The bulk of it is in major depression. I don't think that anyone's going to be surprised by that, as well as bipolar. And then, you know, we, again, like in substance use, the unknown category with 3,000 as well, which again, doesn't mean that they're not coming in having signs and symptoms of any kind of mental illness, but they either have diagnosed or they might not be sure yet, and they haven't given them a formal diagnosis. That kind of is the bulk of the slides, as far as just to give you a breakdown and idea of the women entering care and what services or what, you know, what their demographic kind of profile is looking like. Similar to what Susan or Rebecca and all the other panelists have mentioned thus far, I think there is a great stigma associated with mental health and substance use. And the more panels like this, the more education, the more media campaigns, the more bus ads, all the different things that we're collaboratively doing in the community to get the message across and to make people aware of the services that are available. Mental health, behavioral health issues are very isolating, and there is a huge stigma attached to it. So the more that we talk about it, the more that we can address it and highlight and make people aware that organizations like Jewish Community Services, all the work that the school system is doing, I would venture to say that a lot of the parents in the school system don't even know that Sally's department exists and how to tap into services through the school system. So the more education and the more awareness that we can bring to the topic, the better we can serve our community. So I'll leave it at that, and we can get into solutions and some of the services that we can provide to help out in the next section.
Perfect. Later. Yes. I mean, we dare to dream that a school district could give us the services that you all are giving us. Sally, please tell us, what are you seeing in our schools? We're really hungry to know.
Okay. First of all, we know that mental health has been prevalent for quite some time, clearly, and hence the onset of our department. And we were really fortunate to get our department rolling 2 years, about good 2 years in prior to the pandemic. So we really had a good foundation in place. There's no doubt the pandemic, probably more than any of us expected, whether it's children, teenagers, or adults, we're really seeing a lot of individuals who are still struggling, having a hard time moving back into the way we were before the pandemic. So we definitely have a heightened need for support when it comes to mental health. We can say that social media is a huge competing factor for students. That's something, you know, when we think about how we grew up, we didn't have that. And I always say, thank goodness we didn't have that. But the reality is we have that. So what are we doing? I'll talk about solutions later and what we're doing, but I will say that I'll echo what we've all said. It doesn't matter what entity we represent. It's the education. If we don't understand what it is, what are the signs and symptoms as a teacher, as a parent, as a student themselves. So we're standing on our heads to push in so many different types of trainings. Mental health awareness trainings, one that's required by the state right now, youth mental health first aid training for all adults in our school district who work directly with students. It's amazing training, which has really opened the eyes of teachers, staff. We've even trained our bus drivers, our school police. So we're all on the same page and understanding this is a concern, there is a need, and children are not going to succeed academically sitting in your classrooms unless they have the social, emotional, mental health support they need. We've rolled out several different trainings for parents, for caregivers, again, just on, and then several programs for students because they have to understand themselves. So we really have had to, like I said, standing on our heads to put the awareness out there and working to let everybody know that, like Laura said, that we are here. We are here and we've spent a lot of money. Our district, from the state, we have grants. We now have ESSER dollars. We've hired additional staff and there is a lot of help. We've really reduced that student to staff ratio. There's so much help right there within the schools. That's the first step, knowing that you can call your child's school. We have phone numbers. You'll see all that later. But we really try to make that first impact right there at the school level. Everything we do is free of charge. And then the next step would be, as you know, at more intense, we have to let parents know that we have opportunities to assist them above and beyond the school level. But again, it's a lot of education, a lot of competing factors in society now. And we have to realize that parents are having their own mental health challenges. So we always have to look at that too. So we're trying to help the student, but then they also have that at the parent. So working really closely, those wraparound services to make sure that the whole family is getting the support that they need.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. Heather, please take it away.
As well. We are definitely seeing an increase in requests for counseling services. We're seeing a number of youth being referred. We're seeing, heightened rates of depression and anxiety. We're seeing increased number of calls in our 211 Miami contact center. For example, this is a combination of our calls to the 211 line for general information and referral services about community resources, combined with the calls coming in directly for the Lifeline. For those of you that don't know, 211 Miami does answer calls for the Suicide Prevention Lifeline in both English and Spanish, as well as chat. And so, on average, we're seeing 70,000 plus calls in total to 211 each year. And of those, we average anywhere from 18 to 24,000 calls specifically through the Suicide Prevention Lifeline that's answered by our specially trained helpline counselors. I'll be talking in the next section about the rollout of 988 and what potential impact that may have in terms of increased call volume and chats through the Lifeline, directly impacting our contact center. And we're also seeing increased requests just for general information and education. Parent support groups is a big request. How to help their children, how to cope during these difficult times. For caregivers, information about, how to intervene, when, how to get help for my child, when to have those conversations, what to look out for, when is it time to get therapy, what are some other options for support. Also, I think kind of just on a more general level in the field of mental health, research is showing we're anticipating a shortage of mental health professionals in the future. And I think that's for a couple of different reasons. One, we know that in this field, our direct service providers are significantly underpaid. Most of our funding has been flat for many years. And, the cost of doing business continues to increase, especially in, today's current market. And so really, as a society, being able to value what we pay our mental health professionals and our frontline workers and our crisis support counselors. There's a lot of room in terms of on like a government level and advocacy level that we can be doing. More federal funding needed to support our crisis response teams and systems, providing those frontline services and anticipation of all this increased request and access to services and care. In terms of a positive aspect, I would say, as we see increased call volumes and rates coming in for crisis support, we know that that's indicative that help-seeking behaviors show a potential reduction in suicide risk behavior. So overall, the work that we're doing is making an impact, right? The suicide prevention strategies and efforts are making a difference. And so it's also about training others, lay people, as well as professionals about suicide prevention. We offer a lot of that training, as do many of the other partners and funders on the Impact Collective today. We couldn't do it without the generous support from our funders like the Children's Trust and Thriving Mind and United Way and others who are investing in our services, knowing that this increased demand is coming and that we need the additional infrastructure and helpline counselors to support the anticipated increase in call volume. We couldn't do that without them. And, we need to train individuals how to identify, how to respond, what to say, where to get help. And so that's where our mental health awareness training comes in. We offer the mental health first aid training. We offer question, persuade, refer, which is a briefer intervention, very useful tips and tools on how to intervene and get access to care and mitigate the risks for suicide. Identifying the warning signs, looking for, when rates of depression, anxiety, certain symptoms, behavior changes, all the things that Susan and the others have spoken about, how to identify and how to respond. So, I think in terms of issues, we're seeing this great demand. We're seeing increased pressure on frontline workers, including mental health professionals, to answer the call, to respond, to, provide support for the increased demand for services, and it is taking a toll. So we need to make sure and that we balance that with, how to take care of our helpers as well, how to prevent burnout, how to support those on the front lines. Self-care is a mitigating factor. So just like we're seeing increased rates in the general public, we also need to pay particular attention to all of those supporting the individuals that are currently struggling with mental health issues. And I think that's something that, as organizations and as administrators, we need to be mindful of how we're taking care of our respective staff and the work that they do day in and day out. And to echo what Rebecca started the conversation with earlier, the information, the education, the awareness, we can't do enough. We can't do enough to the marketing and the outreach to let others know where to get help and that support is available, but also just to focus on destigmatization. I think we are starting to see a little bit of movement in that regard, especially with the number of individuals coming forward, especially public figures as a result of the pandemic, whether it's high profile professionals. We saw athletes throughout the Olympics, and all of that does a lot to say, hey, you're not alone. There is help available, and it happens to me also. And here's how what I'm doing to take care of myself, and that all individuals really deserve that support, that care, and compassion, and not shame and not stigma.
That's incredible. You had a huge list of questions that you're finding people are calling and asking. And I think we want to answer all of those. Susan, can you give us solutions? What can we do?
We talked and Heather mentioned parent support. So NAMI is different than the other organizations, you know, in this Impact Collaborative, as we are a peer-to-peer organization. And so we consist of individuals like myself who are family members, and individuals like my son and Rebecca, who have successfully managed and recovered from a mental health challenge. And they're specially trained according to a national model. NAMI National is the largest mental health organization in the country with over 650 affiliates. We cover Miami-Dade and Monroe. And so we have parent support groups, we have spouse support groups, we have support groups for young adults, and we have support groups for peers. Everything we do is in English and Spanish. We also have a support group for parents of children. And the collective wisdom in it, combined with the training of the support group facilitator, is very powerful to help families accept, learn how to communicate, learn how to advocate for their loved ones. You know, the mental health system the resources are there and are in the community. But one really needs to understand where they are and how to communicate with them and how to access them. And so we are one point of contact that from both the referral as well as a support base. We also have educational programs, Ending the Silence. We offer and will be doing it both on in person and Zoom, along with a partnership with Miami-Dade Public Libraries. We'll be offering Ending the Silence, as well as Heather mentioned QPR, and we've also scaled up QPR. It's digestible, bite size in the sense that it gives folks the tools that they need in an hour and a half presentation. So you know, from my perspective, I think that along with the others, I'm feeling optimistic that with the communication, with the education, and with the outreach initiatives that NAMI is doing, as well as JCS, as well as Thriving Mind, as well as the schools, I think we can look towards more impact and having a reduction in some of the very disturbing numbers that the Surgeon General, the CDC, and the American Academy of Pediatrics have all raised alarms on. And I encourage folks, everything we do is free. We have people answer the phone in English and Spanish. Everything we do is in English and Spanish. You know, I welcome those those that are here today, as well as those who are watching this recording, to connect with us.
Not alone, peer-to-peer. It's such an important thing. You can feel so comfortable with somebody who looks like you, another parent, another student, right? Thank you for all that you do and NAMI's done over these years. Laura, tell us, give us a fishing pole. What can we do?
Well, you know, I think a big factor is collaboration and education, right? I think one of the challenges we talked about earlier is people not knowing the resources and not knowing where to go. So Thriving Mind being the managing entity for our region, we have a number of different services that we do offer the community free of cost. You don't have to have funding, you don't have to have insurance. We fund a number of these great programs. We fund NAMI for a lot of their services. We fund JCS for their 211 line. But I would venture to say that a lot of people don't even realize that those services or those programs are available to them. You could always contact us. I think the slide under me in this section has our contact information. You can feel free to reach out to Thriving Mind through our website. We have an informational email where you can shoot your questions and get any questions out to our team members, or just call the main line and ask for any of the system of care team staff to be able to help you. But let me tell you some of the programs that are available for people in crisis. Rebecca mentioned the mobile response teams. We do have 2 in our community. We have one in Monroe County operated through Guidance Care Center. We have the one here in Miami-Dade operated by Banyan. I can give you the phone number and I can drop it in the chat afterwards, and I can send everything to Kami to get it out to everybody. Banyan's number is 305-774-3616 for their mobile response team. And that is an alternate to calling the police, as Rebecca mentioned when she was speaking, as far as it is clinical staff that go out to wherever you are, your home, the school, your church, wherever you may be experiencing your crisis, where they can speak to you, help de-escalate the situation if possible. And if in fact you need to be Baker acted and get you to a crisis receiving facility to get the care to help you get further stabilized if that needs to happen. So we have those resources in our community as far as mobile response. We're excited. This legislative session was the first time in years where the state of Florida is putting more resources into mental health and behavioral health. So we're very excited for more money coming into our community. And as part of those additional resources, we are looking to expand our mobile response footprint and have up to 3 more teams in our community. So coming soon over the next few months, we will hopefully be bringing those teams online by July 1st. So more to come on mobile response, but wanted to at least let you know of the resources that are currently available. Heather's been doing an excellent job of talking about 211 and promoting the 211 services, but that is another resource in our community that a lot of people may not be aware of. As she mentioned, if it's something as just information and referrals as far as, getting linked to community resources, her counselors are out there being available to help you navigate the system. And if it is a crisis situation where you are experiencing whatever suicide ideations or thought, her counselors are also trained to be able to help you de-escalate and get the right resources out to you, or you to the right resources. So that's also an incredible resource that we have in our community. Heather alluded to the new 988 number that will be operating come July. You guys may have heard of the federal law. President Trump signed that back during his presidency, creating a 988 number. So it will be a national number for people to be able to call who are in mental health crisis. We anticipate the volume coming up, going up on crisis calls as that number becomes more readily available. We're not quite sure what that number will be. A lot of people are trying to predict it, but I'm not quite sure how we predict it accurately. But we are working with JCS and 211 to gear them up to be able to, get those calls as they come in and the number becomes available, and another source and another number available for people to call that are seeking care. In Miami-Dade County, we also have what's called a crisis. I'm completely blanking on the name. It's our CRF, our centralized receiving facility here in Miami-Dade County, which is also operated through Banyan. And Banyan has a crisis stabilization unit where if you do need to be, hospitalized and stabilized, they can keep you for that observation period. But the centralized receiving facility, or the CRF, able just to assess you and help you. It's a 24-hour facility where you can come in, they can give you crisis support, can assess you, can see what your needs are, and it's jointly funded by Thriving Mind and Miami-Dade County as another resource for crisis support in our community. I will get all those resources dropped into the chat, and I will also forward them to Kami for her to be able to send it to everyone. And I think those are some of the big resources that I think Thriving Mind can bring to the table. And the more that we educate and have panels like this and sessions like this where we can further educate our community as to the available services, the better impact and the better collaboration we'll have. So thank you.
We are rich in services, and that is relatively new, so people don't necessarily know it. Also, it's important for us to be informed about the real meaning of what resources are. It's not about defunding, it's about funding those response systems. The more educated we all are, and the more that we converse with our policymakers and our representatives as well, we also do a service by bringing our leaders along with us. We don't have to assume that just because somebody's in an elected position or because they're a public servant, that they've had the opportunity and the luxury of the education that you're all getting here today. Right? So do not be shy. We at the Women's Fund are not shy about bringing these conversations to the fore. It's not about politics. It doesn't have to be, it really is about information that's current and champion led by those voices of those who have lived the situation to tell us what the best practices are. So it's an exciting time, and it's up to all of us to advocate. We have amazing people here. Just want you all to know, Miami Foundation is here, people who work with domestic violence in our community. So many of these issues are interdigitated and crossover. Life is never simple. We try and put things into boxes, and we talk about this is what's happening with this crisis. Often it comes, clothed in a different costume. So thank you for all of you who are showing up today to inform your work with the work of all these amazing leaders today. Sally, resources.
All right, so just I'm going to give you in a nutshell version of what we have to offer in Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and just a few slides that go with it. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that we identify a variety of individuals within our schools as school-based mental health support. So the newest position within our district is the mental health coordinators, and those are the individuals that we've hired in our department. We have 118 of those individuals now, and they touch every single school. Some have 3 schools, some have 2 schools, and they just handle those schools. They are there physically at that school site, providing direct mental health support to students and families. And that is really the biggest bonus we can say as to the work that we've been able to expand within our district. But they don't work alone. They work closely with the school's counselors, social workers, school psychologists. We have trust specialists in some of our schools, EBD clinicians for the ESC and the ESC centers, and then student support specialist positions, which is also a newer position that some of our schools have been able to hire with ESSER dollars. So you can see it's a whole lot of pieces. We call these kind of like our mental health team, all supporting students and families. If you go to the next slide, we're always happy to brag a little bit about all of the community partners that we have with us. So one of the great connections we have is through our Health Connect, through the Children's Trust. And that started years back with putting nurses in some of our schools, and then expanded to now these 6 entities assisting with mental health professionals and social workers within our schools. Not every school, but a good majority of our schools also have these individuals pushing in. You go to the next slide, and you'll see these are the contracted agencies, and you'll see Jewish Community Services of South Florida. Heather's with us today. We established contracts at the onset of our new department, and these 12 entities has been working with us. We're now in our 4th year working with these entities, and these are free of charge, these services, to all students, all families, and the work spans from county line to county line. Any of our students can receive these services in different languages, families in different languages, and we've even expanded it to make it so easy for families they can either have these services at the school, at the agency, through teletherapy, or at the office themselves. So again, any opportunity that we have to make it as easy as possible for students and families to receive these services. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that, again, we talked about the different trainings that we're doing to empower. As we said earlier, I think Heather or Laura mentioned it, we have a lot of non-mental health professionals. Obviously, most people are not mental health professionals working in our schools. So these are different trainings that we've put into play to ensure that we help those individuals understand what they're looking for. What are the signs and symptoms? And we really upped the ante when it came to trauma-informed practices on the onset of the pandemic, because we saw a lot of heightened need for those trainings. And then a lot of grief sensitivity, de-escalation strategy training, and building resiliency as well. Another way that we support the work in mental health, we go to the next slide, you'll see that we have put in a lot of what we call it like tier 1 universal programs for all students. Not every child is going to need mental health services, but we're here to educate students and ensure that they have the tools that they need within their day to achieve and succeed socially and emotionally. So not to go through every one of these, but most of them are in partnerships, and that will be the next slide in just a minute. But again, these are tier 1 level programs that help students just the CASEL competencies, understanding how to just cope day in and day out, some resiliency factors. And one of and you'll see NAMI right in the middle there, our partnership with NAMI, the Ending the Silence program. That's one of many programs that we have. And right next to NAMI to the right, if you look at the mental wellness clubs, that's one we're really, really proud of. About 165 schools have a mental wellness club now. That's something that we started in empowering students within the schools to lead these initiatives. We're really trying to get students to understand this world, understanding what they may be going through, and again, empowering them to spearhead activities within their schools and lead some great initiatives, especially now we're in Mental Health Awareness Month, and they're doing some great work to support the adult work within their schools. And just one more slide, I believe, just to touch on is, again, community partnerships. So you'll see here, these are the, and I know there's some more, but these are the main partners that we work with very closely. You'll see the Miami Marlins, the Heat, they've partnered with us in some very special programs that we're doing, our Mindfulness Champions program, our Great Minds, Great Athletes program. So we're getting a lot of support from outside partners. You'll also see on there Thriving Mind of South Florida. We've really had an opportunity to really expand the work that we're doing with Thriving Mind, the managing entity. And we could go on and on. We can't do this work alone, as we've all said. So we continue to partner and expand. And then I believe lastly, we have a parent assistance line that was made available at the beginning of our department. It's not a crisis line, but it is a Monday through Friday assistance line. And we answer that, and it's available in all 3 languages. And it's just to help that parent who doesn't know where to turn. They can't, again, trying to just make it that easy. We are here to help. Bottom line, we have the resources, we have the funding, we have the programs, and we have the people. I mean, many of them are on here today. Our mental health coordinators, amazing. You'll see our website there, a lot of information. We always draw people to our website. And then the last slide is just our leadership team here at Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Again, we also have a Twitter account. Thought I'd never do Twitter in my whole life, but we do know the good in it. And I think the bottom line is we like to promote the positivity. We talk about the positive mental wellness, how we need to all work to do that, how it's as important as our physical health, mental health important as physical health. We're really putting that angle here. And again, I think it's doing a great wave over our district to remove the stigma. And again, that work is happening because of all these great partnerships that we have today. Thank you.
Going to people where they are in the schools, at Twitter, via text. It's all amazing. Heather, you're the last one to tell us what we can do before we go on to some questions that my people keep on texting me. We've got all kinds of great questions here.
Okay, so I'm going to talk more specifically about 211. A lot of individuals aren't familiar with 211, and 211 Miami is a program of Jewish Community Services providing information and referral, crisis counseling and response for all of Miami-Dade County and Monroe counties, as well as backup for other centers throughout the state of Florida, and backup nationally for the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, answering calls in English, Spanish for the Lifeline, as well as chats. So what is 211 Miami? Many of you are familiar, but others are not, and it's just about, spreading the word. 211 Miami provides 24/7 information referral and access. We have a database of over 4,000 social service resources just for Miami-Dade and Monroe County. So anybody calling with a question about, I have a housing issue, I need financial assistance, mental health services, substance abuse treatment options, dial 211. There's an array of services that an individual can be connected to. In addition, the crisis counseling, confidential, no charge crisis counseling provided by specially trained helpline counselors, available to help, de-escalate individuals, provide safety, someone there to listen, but also refer for services if needed. We also work very closely with the mobile crisis team, as well as law enforcement when law enforcement needs to be dispatched. Let's see, I also wanted to mention that we are accredited. And go to the next slide, Cami. So Laura spoke about this at length and wanted to make everyone aware that the Suicide Prevention Lifeline general number, the 1-800-273-TALK, is transitioning to 988. The rationale, the reasoning behind that is wanting a number that's easy to remember, that becomes, universally well-known, recognized, that when a person is in crisis, right, they may not be thinking rationally, thinking clearly, fumbling with trying to find, where do I get help? Who do I call? 988 being a easily recognized number to reach out to. And so, this provides an opportunity for that in education, information, and awareness. And as Laura noted, we do anticipate an increased volume in calls as a result of all of the awareness and marketing efforts to push this out nationwide. It is really hard to say what that increase in volume will be. And obviously, once it's rolled out, we'll be monitoring that very closely. But estimates, and these are just best guess estimates, right? Anywhere from, on the low end, a 365% increase in call volume, upwards of 831% increase in call volume. So time will tell. But obviously, as a result, a lot of funding coming down to enhance capacity and increase the infrastructure. Here at JCS alone, we are hiring for an additional 18 plus positions, helpline counselors, as well as other support positions to expand our overall contact center services. And in addition to answering the 211 general information and referral line, and the crisis helpline, we have a number of other specialty helplines for which we're answering calls as well. And in terms of other resources, 211 really is the connector. So if anyone has a question about, well, I do need mental health services, I know there's a number of providers in the community, 211 will respond and provide up to 3 resources when 3 resources are available, and look to see in what area of the community the individual may be living or calling from in order to ideally connect them with resources in their area, if those resources are available. And so, we have to work very closely with our networks at Thriving Mind, at Children's Trust, looking at the systems of care to ensure that, that care coordination, that warm transfer, that handoff, that, the information in the database is always updated and accurate, so that we are providing those connections in a timely manner and getting people connected to the resources for which can best support them. And then I just wanted to kind of wrap up with echoing, we've said it a few times and can't say it enough, is that, it also starts with all of us helping to destigmatize mental health and suicide, and recognizing that it is a health issue. It's a health issue to be treated like any other health issue, and laying the framework very early on with children in terms of how to talk about emotions, how to talk about feelings, and training our community members, not only our mental health professionals, but lay people as well, in terms of identifying and responding to the risk factors. I think we're all very familiar with the risk factors, but knowing, when we see those signs, when we recognize them, how to respond, and then how to mitigate by enhancing the protective factors. And, one of the issues for the protective factors is the education and awareness. So, we've talked a little bit about training and education, and I'll be sure that Cami sends out the resources that we provide in collaboration with all the partners on this panel today. But specifically for mental health awareness training, the QPR, question, persuade, refer that we've talked about, mental health first aid training, trauma-focused, trauma-informed care interventions. We're a wealth of resources, and if we're not able to provide the resource, we will definitely recommend one of our other esteemed partners in the community that we work closely with, because we firmly believe in collaboration. And I think it's really, when we have someone in our system of care, or we have a youth or an individual or an adult that's identified in need of support, in need of help, is that we come together and we have this, wraparound supportive environment where working with each other, connecting with each other, knowing the resources amongst each other to provide the best level of care, and advocating. We can't do enough to advocate for high quality, affordable, culturally competent mental health services and access to care.
Thank you for that and for all you do. I have sent so many people in my immediate and not so immediate circles to 211. That simple clarity, knowing that we can count on you for that warm transfer to get somebody to somebody else who can support, whether it's any of these individuals who are here in the organizations they represent. It's just been such an amazing service. So we thank you all. The first question, actually, Rebecca, please join us. The first one's texted to me and it's for you. And it's, I think we all share this. Is there a way that we can mess up by caring? I think one of the biggest fears of people in the community is that you can mess up. If you're worried about somebody that you care for, somebody that you love, and you think there's suicidal ideation going on, speaking up, can we make it worse? What would you recommend for those who are seeing loved ones suffer and are afraid of making a mistake?
So just help me understand, is it concerns about like what not to say or how not
Yes,
to
what to
approach?
say. This is particularly from a mother, saying, could I make it worse? Could I, push my daughter away?
Like I said before, I think validation is key. So you need to kind of be cautious about like making assumptions. I know that there's a really common assumptions, especially with children and adolescents, like, oh, you're just saying this to try to get attention. That is kind of a very dismissive thing to say. And even if somebody is saying those things for attention, we need to pay attention, because if somebody says, oh, I want to end my life, and they feel like that's how they need to get their needs met, then that's definitely something that needs to be addressed. I think also there are phrases like, oh, you shouldn't feel this way. You have so much going for you. What do you have to be upset about? Sometimes there really is no tangible reason why you feel that way. With me, I have one of my diagnoses is bipolar disorder. And if the chemicals in my brain aren't working correctly, then sometimes I'll start thinking that way, or at least in the past before it was managed, I would start thinking that way with no real reason to be upset. Something that I encourage you to say would be maybe like, hey, I might not understand how it feels to want to hurt yourself, or what it is like to go through this, but I'm here for you. Let me know what you need. I'm here to listen. I love you. I care about you. It's like I'm here to support you. And sometimes you don't really have to say anything at all. Just being present and listening to your child or listening to the person in crisis is really important, and making sure that they feel heard. And asking also, like, what can I do to support you? When I'm going through a hard time, my friends ask me that, and it's extremely helpful. So any of those things as an alternative to like invalidating language is something that I would recommend.
That is so helpful. I'm going to put the next question up to the top, even though I'm sorry it wasn't the first one in. We don't have a lot of times, but it's somebody who's asking for really concrete support at this time. So one of our attendees asking, how do you work with a family member who does not want help? Our family is about to give up on him.
May I answer that?
Yes, please.
I would say that 95% or more of the families that we work with in support groups are in that situation. When an individual has a mental health condition, they suffer from a condition called anosognosia, which is, it's not lack of insight, it's unawareness of what they're going through. And we spend a lot of time in our support groups helping family members speak to that individual who does not realize that they have a problem or a challenge, or has been healed by medication and is now off medication because they feel that they don't need it. And there's also a wonderful program called LEAP by Dr. Xavier Amador, who has also written a number of books about, his lead book is I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help. I encourage every family member of a loved one with a mental health challenge to read that book. Knowing the language, when we learned how to speak to our son, who was going through that at the early stages of his recovery, when we learned how to speak to him and how to, as Rebecca said, be present in the moment without judgment, without you should do this, without pushing for an outcome, he started trusting us more and healing as a result. So I really encourage that family member to join a family support group. And all of our groups are on Zoom and are really accessible.
Powerful answer. Would any of the other panelists like to add something, or should I go on to the next question? Okay, we're going to go on to the next question. We have somebody who works with professional doulas who's in the audience who gives great service to the community. And Esther would like to know 2 questions. When's the ideal time for a parent to know about the warning signs for mental health challenges? And also, since it's from the same person, do any of you have any data on postpartum depression specifically? And are you finding that pregnant women who are presenting with previous mental health issues and postpartum depression just worsens it? So the first question, who'd like to take the first question about when do parents need to be made aware? Who'd like to take that?
I'll take the first question, or I'll start. I'm sure others may have something to add. An old adage that I think is very relevant in this case is don't wait for a crisis to talk about how to respond in a crisis. And so starting with kids very early on, talking about what to do when something comes up, because just like we, want our kids to talk about when their stomach hurts or they have a headache or they're not feeling well, same thing with emotions and feelings as well. Being able to openly talk about them and normalize that process so that in the event later down the road, as they get older, something comes up, that those conversations are already happening. Those check-ins are already taking place. And there's things put in place of how, the family, the parents, everyone will respond to that crisis.
Terrific. Thank you.
Maria, I found also with our son that the duration is really important. Everybody has a bad day. Everybody makes a bad judgment. If you're seeing a change in behavior that has a duration that's fairly long, in weeks or months, it's really important to talk to your loved one, as opposed to assume that you know what's going on. They're probably unhappy at college. They probably have too much work. They're away from home and now they're feeling stressed because we're not there to do their laundry. Don't make those judgments. Have a conversation when you're college age or young adult which is when it happens normally, loved one is home or even on the phone, you're sounding different. What's happening? What is going on? And open that conversation. I'll never forget, and this drove NAMI and me and Kathy Coppola, our executive director, to embrace suicide prevention. Jamie Raskin, the congressman who lost his son at New Year's Eve to suicide, said that his one regret was that they never talked about it. Because there's an aversion to taking on the issue. And I would just say every time is a good time, and particularly if there's a longer duration or intensity or substantive change that you're seeing in your loved one's behavior.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Can one of you address the postpartum depression question?
Can you repeat it?
Yes. I'm going to find it and read it. Here we go. Any data on postpartum depression specifically? Are you finding that pregnant women are presenting with previous mental health issues and postpartum depression just worsens it?
We don't have any of the specific data, but we do see a number of women entering services with postpartum depression. We have a number of programs specific to pregnant or parenting women. We have residential services on our substance abuse side of services that's particular target women who are using substances while pregnant or just gave birth, that they can go into services and be able to get childcare while getting the treatment that they need. So while I don't have the numbers to tell you what the profiles are, I can tell you that we do have a number of programs that are particularly targeting pregnant and parenting women and postpartum women. We have a particular program for substance exposed newborns where they can get a lot of education as far as their mental health symptoms or their substance use while they're pregnant, and hopefully prevent, a substance exposed newborn. So we do have a number of different programs on both the mental health side and the substance use side for pregnant moms or postpartum moms.
That's an amazing resource. As Esther is saying here, they have several doula clients who are experiencing bipolar disorder as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what an important frontline service for the doulas who work so closely with each mother to be able to identify that and to go to Thriving Mind or one of you for support on how to best support their clients.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. And Esther, we know you are one of these amazing service providers in our community. And so it thrills me to know that that connection's been made today. I'm quite certain that Esther will be in touch with Thriving Mind, and that quite a few doulas in her network will be benefiting from this. So incredible. There have been some questions that have been answered in the chat that I think everybody would like to hear the answer. So one of the questions was, why are white people theoretically, and the stats are higher in different cultural groups? And Laura, you answered that. Would you like to just share it briefly in the couple minutes we have left?
Sure. One of the things that research has shown is white individuals are higher represented in the suicide rates, and part of that is white individuals are more likely to leave notes or have more likely to have received behavioral health services in the past. Therefore, there's a documented link towards the suicide or attributed to the suicide, versus other races. Blacks and Hispanics are not likely to leave notes. Therefore, it's considered a death by something else. So it's not attributed to suicide. So I don't necessarily believe that it's that whites are being higher represented. I just don't know that the other races are actually getting attributed to suicide as much as as white individuals.
And we have a side question about why it seems that girls are so much more likely to be experiencing the self-harm, even though boys are more likely to die by suicide. There are pretty dramatic escalation in numbers of girls. Who can address that? Maybe one or two of you. Sally, maybe Oh, sorry. Since it's about the student age, do we have any indications why the spike in young women?
I apologize. I'm holding on to a 10:30 meeting that I have to jump onto,
Sorry.
so I apologize. I know we're time certain. You know, we could look at a lot of factors. There's just you hit the nail on the head. We're seeing the same thing, that more young ladies are being referred for services, or they're more prone to show some signs or self-harm. But they are not at the end. They are not the. It's more of the males who are actually dying by suicide at the age. Now, fortunately, we have not had such an issue with that overall in our school district. With such 330,000 students, the work that's taking place here, we're being very preventative, and the services are being provided. So we're not having that many crises at the end. Very fortunate to say that.
Well, we are at time. Thank you, Sally. We know you have to hop. The most important thing about this conversation is that it's the basis for ongoing conversations, because I know that your phones are going to continue to ring, and we thank you for all your services. We thank you all for being a part of this Central Square. This is your Women's Fund. So everything that we can do to promote awareness, interdigitate, and be stronger together in our services, we thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. A lot of supporters there. We have some of our Grand Mission supporters and some of our Impact Agent Volunteer Corps who've been in the audience. So good to see you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we do meet here the first Thursday of each month to address one of our pillars. And our next pillar actually, and the head of domestic violence has actually been in the audience today for Miami-Dade County, some of those services and how these interdigitate, of course, with mental health. Our next topic is domestic violence. The stats there are also skyrocketing. What is making it more deadly, and what services really work? We're all here about finding what works and sharing and being stronger together. Thank you, each and all.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you. And that public
Let us know
awareness
how we
campaign.
can help.
You do, and you can. You were just amazed by the rich fabric, this network that we have. Amazing. Rebecca, we look forward to your ongoing leadership as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for listening to my story. It really does mean a lot.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you,
It's great
Rebecca.
to see you.
Amazing.
Thank you,
All
Rebecca.
right. See you around the
See you
next
at the walk.
We'll see you at the walk, Susan. And we have a
That's
marching
right,
band.
21st,
Yes.
Yeah,
Very
2022.
important event.
And we
Very
have a
important.
marching band coming, Susan. We've got you a marching band coming.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yay. You're the best. Thank
And
We're
we
you.
have a
getting there.
JCS team coming, Susan.
Great. We're really looking forward to it, to really highlight the message that we can all celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month and also share community resources with the community. So awesome. Thank you. It's a joy to do this work with this amazing group of women. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks,
you.
Connie. Thanks, Nessa.
Thank you all so much.
Great day.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.